6 p.m. on Wednesday, August the 7th. We will call to order the City of Forest Lake Airport Commission. Mr. Schmidt, would you take roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Dahlbeck.
Present.
Mr. Husnick.
Here.
Mr. Munson is absent. Mr. Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay. The minutes for the July meeting we have. Do we have any changes, additions to those minutes? And if not, do we have a motion to approve?
Was Kurt in our last meeting?
Yes.
He was
Yes, he
here
was.
last meeting. Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve them as they are.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And they are approved. And next on the agenda is Silas from Bolton and Mink.
Well, thanks, Commission, again for the time. As you recall, in July, even though the meeting was postponed a week, we were all still waiting on MnDOT to release their list of funded projects for their state fiscal year 20, which began on July 1st. The funny thing is the list got released 4 days after the airport board meeting here, but it didn't really cause too much delays. So when the list was released by MnDOT, there were actually 2 Forest Lake projects that were selected to receive funding. Initially, the thought was that completing the pavement maintenance on the runway, taxiway, apron and taxi lanes in the form of a crack repair and seal coat was the only project that was going to be funded. But the state also has secured funding for completing a master plan and an airport layout plan update. The one project that was on the list that did not get green lit for state funding was the taxi lane extension to allow for the 9 additional private hangars to be constructed on that side, which I'll discuss a little bit more when we get towards the master plan item. But the pavement maintenance project, the estimated cost is just under $171,000, of which the state participation is 95% and the city share is 5%. We had been budgeting 90-10 all along, but when the state released the green list, they also released what their funding participation rates will be for their state fiscal year 20 and 21. So the 95.5 for the Forest Lake projects is in place for the master plan and the pavement maintenance project. And I alluded to previously is what that project is going to consist of is routing and sealing any random cracks that appear. Now, realistically, there's not going to be many, if at all, on the runway or the taxiway that was constructed. We're anticipating seeing more of those cracks in the taxi lane area, on the apron, and then even the entrance road. And then applying the seal coat, what that's going to do is keep the pavement flexible. When you're constructing bituminous pavement, it's made with oil. Well, once the oil kind of cures and dries, then the pavement becomes a little brittle. But what this seal coat will do is kind of penetrate into the surface of the pavement. So it'll look black on the surface, but what it's really doing is working in between that 4 inches of bituminous that's there, keep it flexible and keep the pavements in good shape moving forward to take advantage of the big investment that you guys had made. So like I had mentioned, the estimated cost is, well, I guess it's closer to a little over $170,000. That includes Bolton and Mink services for putting together the design, going through opening bids, and then also for construction observation for that project. Considering the timing with which we were at here, it's already August. If the Airport Commission approves to move forward with the project, then the next step would be to take it to City Council. Realistically, you're looking at opening bids in late September, early part of October. So our plan is to put it right in the bid package that construction can be completed in 2019 if possible, but more realistically, 2020. I did notice there's a typo on my memo there. It should say spring of 2020, not 2021. And the reason for still going forward and opening bids still this year is that the MnDOT has kind of a soft deadline of the end of October to have the grant requests submitted from the city side so that they can secure the funding for it. So knowing that if the master plan project moves forward and you want to complete the pavement maintenance, we need to have open bids in hand so we can submit the total cost so that the city can get a grant for that. So before I move on to the master plan, I'll I'll pause there if anyone's got questions about the pavement maintenance project.
Silas, how long would the runway be down for that work?
My estimate right now is about a week. It's going to take them 1 day just to remove some of the existing pavement markings. 1 day is what we're anticipating for completing any crack repair on the pavement. 2 days to complete the seal coat, and then 1 day to put the markings back on. So we'll try to fast track it, because obviously, with no crosswind runway here, being down a week is going to cause an impact to all the pilots. I don't know how much aerial spraying is done out of the Forest Lake Airport. That's also something that comes into consideration if they decide to do the work this fall. I mean, my belief is all the crop is probably going to be harvested come October, but you guys could attest to that. But we'd work with the commission and the pilots to make sure, we choose a time period that's going to work best for all. But that's the estimate there, is about a week.
That seal coat, does that take some time to dry though too? I mean, is it something that's going to be,
It's a fast curing project because on the surface, it starts to penetrate immediately once it's placed. So realistically, it's a day, and that surface is dry, and you can drive on it and not, run the risk of picking any up on your plane tires or even your vehicle if you happen to drive across it. The one thing we would have to explore, talking to the contractor, is will it cure in time to apply the paint within that same closure period? Or do we have to wait another week, do another 1 day closure to apply the pavement markings? I've seen some manufacturers say you can mark the next day. Others say we'd like it to cure after a week so the paint doesn't start to chip and peel off.
So you're looking for a bid, you're looking for a motion from the Airport Commission essentially to the City Council recommending that we go ahead with a contract bid process for pavement resurfacing and seal coating. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I see.
So included in the packet here is the detailed proposal. I won't go into all the details, but essentially there's the first task, which is to complete the design and put the bid package together to open bids. And then the second task is to complete construction administration on the project. So Bolton and Mank will have personnel on site for the most part of construction, just making sure the contractor is following the plans and specs. And if there's any questions or comments that arise, our person in the field can coordinate with myself to get things addressed, and then I can coordinate with the city, members of the Airport Commission, and then pilots at large out there.
With that kind of seal coat, is there a time of year that we want to exclude from the contract, that we don't want them to, I mean, if they get a break in the weather in April and, and they want to go out there and put it down, I mean, maybe April's not a good time to do that for other reasons with nighttime temperatures or.
There's a temperature specification that the surface of the pavement has to be a certain temperature. I don't know it exactly. I'll have that prepared most likely at the next commission meeting. But it's not, they have to put it during a time where the temperature is going to be conducive because you are dealing with, hot oil essentially going down. And during colder temperatures or when the pavement surface itself is cool, it's not going to bond properly and it's not going to penetrate. So we'll make sure that it's done at a time where it's going to be most appropriate.
Pursuant to the suggestion for a motion, I move to recommend, the Airport Commission recommend to City Council to move forward with the contract bid for pavement and seal coating per the outline submitted by Bolton Mank.
I second it. Any other comments or questions or?
no, just the only comment I want to make is that I certainly concur with that, because when you're going to get 95%
Oh,
money,
you can't.
You can't go
do
wrong.
it.
And why would you wait when
Right.
we want to make sure that maintenance takes place and keep that runway the way it should be after all that we went through to get it there, so.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? None? Motion passes. We have made the recommendation to the city council.
All
And Dan,
right.
if I understand correctly, you'll take that to city council, right?
Correct. I just want to give from an outline and from a timing perspective, I won't be able to get it on for the next meeting this Monday, but I'll get it on for the 26th. I have to go through and just these are reimbursement grants, so we have to expend the money out of city funds, and then we get reimbursed from MnDOT, so it's got to make sure our cash flow works. And just got to do that quick math, and then I'll get it all packaged up. So it'll be on the 26th is when this will go before council for.
Okay.
Is that true for all MnDOT money, that it has to come out of the city first and then get reimbursed?
Our operations grant is the same way. So we expend the funds first, and then we apply for reimbursement for operations grant as well.
Thank you.
All right, and kind of the second project to move, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted and I shouldn't have because you're going.
Nope, was there something you had, Mr. Husnick? Okay, so the second project is kind of the master plan and the airport layout plan update. This is something that the commission here has had discussion since the beginning part of the year. Where you're at is the 2011 kind of airport layout plan, which essentially maps the future of the airport and the kind of development that the city wants to proceed with. You've essentially built that out. Since that time, you've paved the runway, you've constructed the parallel taxiway, and your building area has been kind of well-developed and established where on your ALP, it shows, one additional T hangar that can be constructed, but it doesn't even show that east taxi lane that we had been proposing as part of a previous project here. So it's a good point now to take a step back and say, okay, let's not only plan for, the next year or two, let's plan for the next 20 years for the airport, knowing some of the changes and that you've experienced the past couple of years since you've gone to a paved runway, a lot more activity, a lot more interest, those types of things. So the purpose of the entire master plan and the airport layout plan update is to take a comprehensive view of the airport, starting from, ground zero, the process inventories, your existing facilities, your existing pavements, your existing tenants. There's forecasts that are developed to determine, how many operations are occurring at the airport, inbound, outbound. From there, you develop kind of an estimated forecast for the next 20 years. You look at the type of aircraft that are currently operating there, the type of aircraft that may potentially operate there. And a lot of that information that drives a master plan comes from a user survey. So as part of the process, what we do is we create an online survey for existing pilots for the airport. We also create a business survey to kind of get a better idea of who's using the airport, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and what type of improvements that they'd like to see. And those are kind of the parts that get the project kind of running up off the ground. Once we have that information, what we'll primarily study is looking at kind of building and hangar area. Where else could you develop future hangars for the property, knowing right now you're pretty much built out. You got wetlands on both sides of the runway that make it restrictive. Off the south end of the runway, there's wetlands, there's roads there. So you're really primarily probably looking at where you have, I think, current hangar Echo right now. That's a pretty big wide swath of land that you could develop. It's got access right off of 97. And then you also got the southwest side of the current runway, which ideally isn't the best spot because then anyone needing fuel has to cross the runway, taxi up to the apron. But there's all these types of ideas and options that get developed through the master plan process. You'll also look at, your runway length in the future. If there's any extension to go past 2,700 feet, what's the next logical step? Is it to go to 3,200, 35, potentially plan for 4,000? I mean, when you initiate this process, there's nothing that can't be explored, nothing that can't be studied because you want it to be comprehensive to kind of meet the needs for the airport. And then the other big part about a master plan study is that there is quite a bit of involvement from the public, primarily, members of the airport commission, pilots there, members of the city staff, because as the stakeholders of the airport, you want to know that you had your input as part of the plan to say all these options that have been vetted, because when you go through the process, the course of 4 meetings with, the public, ultimately you end up with an airport layout plan which is going to map the future. So you want to make sure that all the ideas that you could possibly have been vetted, and the ones that are possible are shown on that ALP, which will get support from MnDOT to move forward with construction for the project. So I know I've stated a lot of things here. I'll pause for a second for any questions or comments if anyone is curious kind of how the process goes for a master plan ALP update.
Well, it's kind of required too if we're ever going to do anything with that section, right? I mean, as far as putting in 9 hangars or whatever.
Correct.
They're not going to move ahead with that unless we have this in place, so.
Correct. There was as part of as part of the planning for the taxi lane extension project, we had conversations with MnDOT about just doing a 1-sheet update to show that taxi lane on the ALP. And then there was also some conversation with them about, well, maybe it's time to look at, a full-blown master plan and ALP, considering you've pretty much built out your current ALP. So that is kind of what was a driving factor of putting this project on CIP.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, if this is a 2-year process, I mean, is there a way to do it in conjunction with getting the runways at the south end, or the 9 additional lots
Right.
done at the same time, or do it in phases, so that portion, I mean, was MinDOT, you said, from what you're saying, MinDOT was not open to a simple revision of that end of the runway to get those taxiways done. They wanted the full ALP.
No, sorry, well, I misspoke. They would be willing to just a sheet
Oh, they would,
update,
okay.
but they didn't have the funds for it this year, because what they had mentioned to myself and Mr. Undum is that the project cost was a big ask for the state. They said, well, is there ways to kind of split it up over, 2-year period of time? And we haven't explored what that would look like yet, because we're still hopeful to kind of meet with MinDOT to see what their funding looks like for their fiscal year 21 now, and then 22. But no, you got a good point there, Mr. Steeler. If funds become available for that project, and that is a taxi lane that is going to be proposed, we would move forward, at least get that approved by MinDOT, so that that project could take place.
And has there been any progress in scheduling a meeting with MinDOT?
Not as of yet. We've tried, but unfortunately to no avail. So now that they've submitted the green list, the phone conversations I've had with Dan Byrne, the state rep, as well, they're focused on these 2 projects. If the master plan is moving forward, there will be a discussion with them about the scope of work that's included. And at that time, I'm hopeful to talk about, okay, well, what is funding looking like for state fiscal year 21? Because you kind of mentioned the timeline. So to complete a project like this, it's kind of a comprehensive planning effort. We're looking at from when we kick it off to when it's submitted to MinDOT for approval, you're looking at about a 12-month period. Throughout that 12 months, there's essentially 5 public meetings, 4 with the Airport Commission and members of the public, and then there's an open house as well to make sure the public that is not attending those meetings is aware of, proposed development there, allow them a chance to provide some comments as well. And then there's also meetings with MinDOT themselves to kind of bring them along the way of progress. And then whatever comments are received from the public meetings with the commission, we take those, and those are kind of drives the next part of the study. So in your packet here, there's a detailed scope as well for all the steps that go forward with the master plan, so you can see, why the cost is $150,000 is where it is, just for the level of effort and all the things that are being studied.
So you need a separate motion to move that forward through. right?
Correct. Separate motion for this to take it to the August 26th council meeting.
I make a motion that we move ahead with the master plan and ALP update as needed, to the tune of $150,000 total. State share is $142,500. City share would be $7,500, based on the engineer's estimate.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, all in favor of moving that forward to the city council, say aye.
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 And all opposed? No opposed, that passes. That will move to the city council as well on the 26th, is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and then just the last thing, kind of the CIP is included here, but what we've been doing is, kind of based on the comments from the commission, is kind of doing this more of a shorter time frame, looking at 1 to 2 years out. So as part of the master plan study, there's an implementation plan which really maps the future 20 years. The biggest change that's been made to the CIP as it sits now is kind of implementation of the pavement maintenance plan. But you can see a lot of these projects that were shown for development could easily change based on what the master plan process takes you out. And going through that process is going to give the city a better feel for funding and their CIP. So what you see here is not going to be the same as most likely what you see submitted for the 2021 state fiscal year. So just wanted to point that out as well. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I have a question. I know you are also the engineer for South St. Paul's Airport, is that right?
That's SCH now.
Oh, it is SCH?
Correct.
Okay. Were you previously, or other
Yeah,
airports?
previously that was
Okay.
Bolton and Mank.
I guess what I was getting at, I'm curious on county funding towards some of these airports. Right now, we don't receive any funding from Washington County.
No.
I don't know if Lake Elmo does. And I was just curious if other airports you've been involved in receive any county funding.
Yeah, there's a number of airports in the state that are shared between the county and the city, so that when it comes to the maintenance, operation, budgeting, they have a certain cost participation that's set up for them. Ones that I know off the top of my head are, like City of Long Prairie and Todd County, they have an agreement of how they're going to fund the airport. Bear with me, I know there's some others,
I
I'm just drawing a
wondering if
blank at this
That's an avenue we can
juncture.
look down the future, or we do not want to do that.
It's never been brought up.
Okay, well, I think it's something we should talk
Oh,
about. instead
Little
of-
Falls and Morrison County, they have an agreement.
Okay.
Because realistically, there's usually one airport within a county, sometimes two. So it depends on if the city that the airport is in, if they want to be the sole sponsor, or if they solicit support from the county. But I know South St. Paul is one that's solely sourced by the city of South St. Paul, though they're not receiving any county assistance there from.
Okay, well, I mean, in Washington County, you have both Lake Elmo and us, and we'd have to think about that as well, but I think that's an.
But Lake Elmo is a MAC airport, so they're
Oh, so that doesn't,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to worry about that.
correct.
Okay.
Is that the only other airport in Washington County?
I believe you are correct. That's
Yes.
the only other airport.
Lino,
Osceola.
yeah, that's on the other side.
Lino is a privately held airport.
That's, okay.
Seaplane base is
Seaplane thing,
privately
yeah.
held.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just curious on that. So we should
Well, that's
look into
something-
that and see
absolutely.
what possibilities
Yeah,
might be.
yeah, Sure, because we pay taxes into the Washington County, there's no question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I do not have anything else for you, Silas. Anybody else have anything for Silas?
No, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Don, I've got a couple things I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind.
I have one more that I just want to talk about, if you don't mind first. I have, back in November, Dan, we passed a motion, a recommendation of the city council to initiate action regarding the non-aeronautical business operating on the airport. Did that go to city council, or what's the status? When is that gonna
Well,
go
that's,
before?
that's one of the things that is gonna be part of what I. wanna
Okay,
talk
I'll
about.
let you,
Well, what happened is, first of all, I want to talk about just to get it, so I don't forget about it. A couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or so, I thought the gas pump was making a horrible noise, just terrible. So Dan called the petroleum company, and I met him out there. And he ran and said, no, that's just the way it is, it's just sitting on this pedestal. And, okay, well, you're the authority here. Well, then, not no more than just last week, the pump actually locked up. The motor, all it would do is just hum. So what we were looking at there was a fire, So now the people came back out again. I met him out there, and he took the belt off, and the pump itself was turning free, but the motor itself was just like grinding rocks in there, So they changed the electric motor and fixed it. And the pump itself is a vane-type pump, carbon veins or whatever. You can feel them kind of clicking there when you're turning. But he showed me about that. And anyways, they changed that motor, and now it's a whole lot quieter, and he doubted very much if that particular pump could ever cause, what we were finding in the lines there before with contaminants, because the veins aren't made out of metal and that kind of thing. So what they want to do now is the filters have been changed. They've been changing them on a 6-month basis. Dave's been doing that and making sure they've been cutting them open and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. They thought maybe that some of that stuff came, a couple years ago. We had the hose changed there, and it didn't. And we were missing one filter on the pump too. So hopefully everything is back on the way it should be. And I've never noticed any of these contaminants that just by luck or by whatever. But anyway, just wanted to report on that because I just happened to be out there. The subject you just brought up, it was supposed to go to city council. When I talked about the city council, and they said, well, I'll send it back to the airport commission, and, because it's a new council and all that kind of stuff. So last week I had a meeting with the mayor and our new city administrator, Patrick. And we talked about lots of different things. One of the things that was important to me, where I started out the conversation, was the fact that the 123 acres that we still own, the city still owns, now there's a concerted effort to get that piece of property sold, okay? What that means is that we're no longer gonna get the farm funding off of it if it gets sold. So now how do we approach that? There's a situation where it never should have happened that way. That money should have gone into the general fund, and then there should have been a budget set up for the airport, as far as I'm concerned. That whole thing was bogus. So that is a discussion that came up. We also talked about the value of that property, and there should be some kind of compensation coming to the airport as that's sold. Now, there's nothing on the books, nothing written down, nothing signed, nothing, but there's a concerted effort to try to get that piece of property sold and try to get that moved on down the line. The other thing we talked about was try to deal with how we can deal with the $280 thing that has been an issue back and forth at the airport here, and we're looking for a way where we could at least end that. Now, keep in mind, there's no decisions been made on any of this. It's just that we're discussion that we want to get into a public meeting, it'd be like a workshop meeting, that kind of thing, so we can get some of those things squared away. So we talked about the funding. We also talked about the fact that, we've increased the tax base at the airport by a lot of money. We all pay taxes out there. Those taxes that we pay into the city, the school, and the county are never a consideration when it comes to our funding. Never. It's just, it's not, and so my question was, why is it any different when you're plowing snow or cutting grass than when you're going down through a residential neighborhood? All that stuff is paid for with their taxes. So what's the difference? And then, so my question also was, why is it that we are treated like a separate entity, like a standalone entity? And so those things are going to come up for public discussion here, hopefully very soon. The businesses that we talked about, that they were also discussed. And we talked about, right now, as far as I'm concerned, the planning commission, or excuse me, the airport commission, we don't have any credibility while this is going on. And the reason is, if somebody else wanted to come into a hangar and just start something, they can do it. We can't stop them. There's no way. And it's going to affect our funding. And if we ever have an opportunity to get federal funding, that's a long ways off, and it may or may not ever happen. But unless they change the rules, those are all things that we have to be looking at to get things right. And so I think I've covered the thing, but we talked it was an hour-and-a-half meeting, just the three of us. So those things are going to be coming up for public comment. And so to answer your question, that we'll get that in the workshop, and then the council's got to make a decision on that. The problem with it, the council has to realize they got to take ownership of the airport, and that's been the biggest problem. The airport commission, we're a advisory board, nothing more. We can make that decision and push it onto the council, but it never seems to happen. We tried that last November, and they didn't want to do it that way. Of course, the other council didn't want to do that. So anyways, I just wanted to let you guys know that those are the items that we covered in this conversation. And I may have even missed a couple, but because we talked about grass mowing, and we talked about snow plowing, and the other maintenance out there, and how those costs relate to our budget and where that money's going to come from, and so that farming income, that was set up way back when this first started, and it was just a really poor way of doing it. As far as I'm concerned, the city needs to recognize what the benefit of this airport has been, especially through that land sale and what they've gained in selling all these different properties, and the tax base that's produced, and we were able to give away a piece of property that was worth $496,000 to the YMCA because of that sale. There's the Fenway Park area, the ice arena, all that. It never would have happened without that agreement. And we need to recognize that there was an agreement between the Denton Township and the Dohertys, and I think we have an obligation to do what we can here to keep a very important asset in the city of Forest Lake. And one of the things I pointed out too is that, you know, an airport like ours that's new now, basically refreshed, it's a selling point when somebody wants to come into our city and open a commercial business. They may, you know, where they could have access to a smaller aircraft, maybe they could fly over to Anoka and get on a jet or something like that, or fly into Minneapolis. The other thing that's gonna happen too, within the next 4 or 5 years, you're gonna see Uber flying people out of this airport to downtown. It's already happening in New York, and so we're gonna be a really important hub here, not only for that sort of thing, but also for maintenance and all that. So anyways, those are the things we covered in that discussion, so just wanted to go from there.
Silas, you won't have to sit in traffic for an hour.
Yeah.
Send the Uber plane down and bring you up.
There is an Uber flight right now in New York. It was in AOPA magazine. They talked about it. And Uber, they're not into aircraft. They're just into managing the thing. And they're working with all these different manufacturers to come up with an aircraft that someday you're gonna see a situation where you're gonna get in this thing like a drone, push a couple buttons, sit back and relax, and it's gonna zip you downtown. All electric, completely electric. So it was an interesting article, and I think we're gonna see it very shortly. But anyways,
Well,
that's all I
thank you.
had.
It's good to know the city council is aware of all the issues, and even though we've kind of been silent
Well,
on everything.
the problem is not the whole city council's been involved with it, so
Right.
there has to be some education going along with those
Right.
folks so that they know what's going on too, so. That's why I want to get this on a workshop meeting, so.
Okay. Any of the other commission members have any topics for this evening, any agenda items before we go to the floor? Yes.
Just one. I talked with some city staff ahead of time. We talked about trying to get farm access and the trees by Hangar Echo. And the bugs over there are just enough to carry you away. So no one's marked anything or anything yet. And then, of course, it would cost a lot. If we hired a contractor to do it, that would cost an awful lot. But it doesn't cost much just to mark the trees, just so we can see what we're dealing with here. So we're trying to get that done just with a can of spray paint bought from my favorite hardware store, Ace Hardware, and just go from there. Let's just see how big the project is first. So I'm just playing with that, and I will only do so at no cost to the city.
I nominate you.
Okay, thank you very much. But, so that's on my mind. There's nothing concerning our IFR approach. Silas, we're working on an IFR approach, but that application is in, and it's just gonna remain in for a while, Silas, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the last I heard. It's-
We just wait to hear, don't call us, they'll call, or we shouldn't call them, they'll call us, okay. I saw a presentation at Oshkosh about Swift Fuel. I know some of you think it's pie in the sky. It's actually pretty good stuff, I think. It would involve a lot of infrastructure, you know, and all that stuff, but it's on the horizon also, as well as electric airplanes. And then the lawn mowing didn't get done. Tim, in front of your hangar, we were gonna mow that whole section, and it didn't get done. And I'm not complaining, city staff works hard, and it looks, where they mowed with the last few days, looks beautiful. But how do we communicate that to the guy sitting on the mower that he has to go down a little farther?
Through Dave. That is with the public works.
Okay,
It's
can
been
I,
communicated. I know I've relayed that message over. I'll
Not
I'll
complaining.
follow up again on it to make
I
sure.
am absolutely 100% not complaining, okay? I just saw it and I thought, gee, they must not have gotten
You
it.
know, and the other thing too, as far as Taylor harvesting that grass that's out there too, I mean, that would make.
He
it
could
look
cut
a-
that, yeah.
It would make it look a lot better.
It's tall enough that he could do that if he wants to,
He'd be willing to do that.
yeah.
That did come up to one, there was one out of the subject too, because the gal from the paper came out, talked about, you know, open house and that kind of thing. We talked about, you know, since they paved the runway and all that kind of stuff, that we kind of lost our volunteer thing out there too, you know. But also at the same time, if we get 9 new hangars in that area, no, we don't have a place to park cars. That's the area where we did all the car parking. So, I mean, that's gonna be more and more of an issue. I want the airport developed, don't get me wrong. But, so there's just some things we talked about. And we lost about, 10-15% of our area for parking airplanes, and there's all kinds of issues there, so.
It's a little area where people park to walk their dogs.
Yeah, well, that's,
Probably put 10
that,
cars,
that might be a
10, 15.
potential.
Yeah, anyway.
Yep.
Or you just bus them over from high school.
Yeah, so those are things, if we're gonna have
Library,
another,
YMCA,
if we're gonna have
yeah.
another open house, those are things that we need to talk about, and I did tell her, and it's supposed to come out in the paper, we'll see if it does or not. The storm kinda superseded that, but, hopefully that we can come up with something where we can have an open house next year, so.
Any other commission members have anything? Okay, anyone from the floor? Mr. Ship, please step to the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm a little perplexed here. I got a bill from the city saying that it's past due. I've got billed in this thing for the last 4 years. I've asked them every year where this is in my contract, and nobody will answer me. And they keep billing me, and now they say it's past due. I'm not really happy about that. If you read the rental agreement in my number 9 hangar, it says that the leasee agrees to pay to leaser for the use of the premises rights and easements wherein described. A yearly rental of 9 cents per square, that was back in '08, it's now 10 cents. An initial total annual charge of $648 payable in advance. That's all been paid, and it'll be adjusted every second year in March, which it has, and it's now 10 cents. It also states down in there that the infrastructure fee for the leased premises is $5,000 to be paid either in full upon the signing of the lease. I paid that. It also says that it is understood that the infrastructure fee is a one-time only fee charged to initial leases. So what do I owe this $1,230, $20 for, or $1,120? Nobody can give me an answer, and I'm not paying it, and I'm never gonna pay it until somebody can show me where it's in my lease. And why can't they do it if it's there? Or why can't they admit that it's not there and correct the situation? I hear you talk about the $280, but nobody said, it's like it's their money and they can do it or not give it back or whatever. You can't steal from people in a lease and break their lease and not do something about it. I expect it to be taken care of.
I hear you. I think in some of the comments that Mr. Hosnick said, that there will be a, in the shop meeting.
Yeah, but you never mentioned that it's what's in the lease. They're just talking about the 280 like it's theirs. That is not in the lease. It's never going to be there. I have a lease that's signed by both parties, and I want it acknowledged.
Understood.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Anyone else? No?
That is gonna be part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
No doubt about it.
No, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And we are
Aye.
adjourned.
6:38.